Welcome, sales professionals, to Sales Trainer Online, where we are putting sales professionals in the know of how to control and ramp up their productivity and indeed create some sort of lifestyle. So this is a follow-on from in the last session, we talked about finding your why. So many of you may not have done that as yet. You'll hear me relate to that again as we go through this little session now. But if you've started your year without embracing the concept of understanding your goals and what it is that you're trying to do, then I can tell you almost already you're at a serious disadvantage. Not so much to your productivity, but improving your productivity and improving what it is that you might be doing in and around your productivity. My major complaint when I talk about salespeople and they embrace the concept of going at it is that we all tend to get productivity. We all understand that we have to get out there in the marketplace, prospect to list to find a buyer, and then eventually sell. But invariably, I see massive peaks and troughs in this. So I just mentioned just a second ago, the quickest way to manage this, most certainly, is to figure out your goals. But once you've actually figured out your goals in terms of your day-to-day productivity, and many of you heard me say this before, you need to figure out what to focus upon. So what you focus on invariably grows. So if you look at the year and you jump on board and you start focusing on the fact that you're just going to get by, then most likely that's what you'll do. If you allow your focus to shift around, which I'll address in just a second, and your productivity is going through peaks and troughs, there are some very identifiable reasons for why this is happening. So the add-on for this is quite simple. I hear salespeople almost all the time talking about getting organized. Well, if you really want to get organized, you need to find your why. You need to have your goals before you even start. Now, if some of you are looking there and saying, well, it's February and I haven't made that start, well, then indeed, in my opinion, I would just say this to you openly, it's never too late to re-engineer your goals and make that start. But you show me someone that is clear on their destination, then I'll show you someone that's going to get there. You show me someone that's not real sure about their destination. If they're saying things like, I'll see how I go. If they're saying, I'll see how it feels, then I'll show you that someone's got some issues and you'll probably get what you're focused on. If you're focused on seeing how you go, well, then it should not come as a complete surprise at the end of the year when the unknown confronts you. So what I didn't add on here when I talk about when you focus on grows and people talk about being organized is quite simply this. I believe what you prioritize gets done. So the first job at hand is most certainly to figure out what you ought to be focused on. But the second, and this is quite clear, is that you should then in turn be focused on the priorities at hand. And that becomes even more important. Yeah? Oh, what's got on here? Sorry. Yeah. So these are the things that we ought to be focused upon. I'll just clobber something so we don't have that problem. Okay. So what you prioritize, oops, a daisy. Sorry. So what you are prioritizing indeed gets done. So I'm saying all the time, again, to salespeople, is focus on the priorities. And that's precisely what this recording's about. It is precisely the message that I hope you get from this in terms of launching your productivity into the new year. Yeah. So a priority on GML, getting more listings, is by far and away the singular most important thing that you can do as a real estate agent. So often I'm saying to real estate salespeople, there are many things inside the real estate space as an industry, as a career choice that you cannot control. You cannot control fluctuations in the market. Supply and demand. It's something that you do your very best. You can't control buyer sentiment. So if buyers are out there buying and cooperating freely, that works very well, but sometimes that doesn't happen. You can't control fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is an imposition. So quite simply, there's many factors that are just beyond your control. And if you subject yourself to the fluctuations in those departments, then this can in turn upset your productivity. But you can control, you definitely can control listings. What do I mean by that? Well, there is such thing as a sales slump. If buyer sentiment drops off and buyers step back, that can be a problem. But there is no such thing as a listing slump. Invariably, in every market climate, there are always people that want to sell. So if you follow our philosophy and put all of your energy into focusing on controlling incoming listing opportunities and capitalize on those, then you are invariably controlling it. I'm yet to see in 30 years of real estate sales myself and real estate training, I'm yet to see any situation where anyone who is successful at listing, where that person has been a failure in any way, shape or form. Okay, so we say listing always comes before selling. And this needs to be your primary focus, definitely your primary focus, as you embrace the whole concept of productivity. And I'll say it again, most of us understand productivity, but where we see to have a failing is we don't add into that progress. So what the message I want to get across to you is definitely you need to initiate your productivity, but you also need to put in place a progressive strategy that sees you incrementally improving, taking larger market share, building a lifestyle, and improving your overall income, which gives you satisfaction. So I say most of the problems that occur inside of the real estate business pretty much emanate from scarcity. And what we want to lock into here, lock in for the message here, is getting the priority of tasks in order so that you do move forward fairly freely. All right, let's have a look at the big problem that I see occurring with most real estate salespeople. I see this with sales teams. Many of you see me talk about this before, but I do need to recap this because it illustrates the point perfectly. When a salesperson comes into a real estate business, many of you, because the year is new, may be starting this way, we tend to focus, put all of our energy onto prospecting. Yeah. And invariably, in putting our energy into prospecting, all of our attention is taken away from buyers, working with sales or whatever it might be. So typically that is a month where our results are down. For some of us, we become a bit disillusioned with this and look at the whole concept and start saying to ourselves, maybe I've lost it. Maybe this is not for me. And some of us sadly start to look at the whole profession and move away from it. I in turn say that a focus on prospects is not going to do you any harm, so long as you understand that when those listings come through, and we see this happen very often, as the listings come through, the salesperson gets excited, starts to then put their energy into getting from those presentations, from those opportunities, actual listed property. And once they get those listed properties, a few of them sell fairly readily because the good ones always get snapped up. The reason for this is I say that we don't sell property at all, buyers buy them. So if you've got great listing that's in the right location and the right buyers found, they'll buy it despite whatever else is going on, which also opens another avenue, which I won't go into today, where I say that great salespeople can readily ignore buyers and put their energy into what I'm about to talk about, because the buyers will buy them despite the fact that you might be not paying a lot of attention to them. But when those listings, those few good ones are sold, they invariably make us feel a little bit more relaxed about it, where we might have been going through some anxiety, and you feel like you're back in. We start to go, maybe I still have it. But we don't make enough sales to set the world on fire. We just merely make enough sales to keep us in the game. Then the third phase of that is we then move into a space where we now have to get those those listings that haven't sold, that we've brought on board. They might be overly expected in price, and we spend all of our energy and time trying to reduce these down. And of course, as people start to listen, because this is our focus, because what you focus on grows, we get those reductions. And invariably, as you get toward the month's end, you are typically left with a whole lot of well-priced listings. As they start to cooperate and some come down, you're making a few sales, but then you move into that big sales bonanza in the fourth month where they all sell. You start walking around 10 foot tall and bulletproof on cloud nine. I've got it. It's all working out. But invariably, as you get toward the end of that month and all the sales are made, and then you've been distracted by those sales, who wouldn't be, because it's quite an alluring attraction, you find yourself all the way back to month one. Now, if you look at this over the space of a 4-month period, there is always invariably a disastrous month where we start and we come back to it. This is cancelled out or balanced out by an extraordinary month. But then you have pretty much a couple of ordinary months. If you look at this over a space of a year, I say that you end up with 3 fantastic months, cancelled out by 3 disasters, and half a dozen where you're just kind of getting by. So what's the problem with this? Well, typically it's just basically where you are focusing your energy, and more importantly, the task that you might or might not be prioritizing. So I say openly and quite freely that a real estate professional really needs to put their energy into all 4. But fundamentally, there are 4 tasks, if you go back on that 1 in 4 syndrome, that you need to be focused upon. Now, the first is prospecting. We call this prospector, identifying and consulting to active property sellers. Now, you'll notice that I didn't say in a traditional sense. If you want to, in the new age, really capitalize on what goes on out there, stop looking at finding sellers. Stop looking to try and identify them and prospect in the traditional sense. I believe that the sellers, your next seller, is right under your nose. Now, this is not necessarily true if you've got no listings, but the moment you get listings, you are coming into touch with people that are frequenting, open for inspections, are interested in information, and there are a percentage of these are what we refer to as active property sellers. So given that you're already surrounded around them, especially if you've got a listing, I openly say that your next seller, you don't have to find them, because typically they're already watching you. Yeah. And this again is an even more interesting phenomenon. You know, if they're already watching you, then it just stands to reason that what we need to do is make sure that the right message is emanating so that they in turn come back to us. So we do this with the prospector system. The next thing is for you to run consultative listing presentations highlighting your professional capacity. You see, I believe that this is where property sellers place the value. It's not in valuing property. It's not in conducting market appraisals. It is purely and simply in you offering them advice, demonstrating your professional capacity as a marketer, as a negotiator, as a communicator. And you need to be doing this on a daily basis. So we need to connect with enough active property sellers to then be running listing presentations to them. The third function that you need to be balancing out is communicating relevant market information effectively. What is this? This is, and the R2S stands for reduce to sell, and I hate to be blunt, but we encourage, and hopefully you do, or at least entertain, optimism with prospective sellers, with active property sellers. So invariably, when they come to the market, they will try a higher than what a higher value or a higher price or a higher asking price, even if it's an auction, than comparative market value. And we openly say that market value and comparative value are two completely different things. And in reality, market value is what an owner receives, and your job in terms of your professional capacity is to leverage the value beyond comparative value, to leverage it beyond compare. Invariably, as the property comes to market, if this doesn't work in terms of your marketing, then you do have to reduce the property to a level where it sells. So this is not draconian. This is actually conducted inside a marketplace. So we do try to manipulate the market to our advantage. But at the same time, we have to be very clear in eventually communicating to the seller what the market is saying or how it is reacting, more importantly, and position it until we've got the right buyers in there. And then finally, with our welcome homes, I think these are still largely misunderstood. It is the critical point with your real estate business in terms of generating new inquiry in particular. But we have to make our welcome homes in the first instance centric to the continuity of business. So we actually have to be focused on marketing property to buyers, but more importantly, demonstrating professional value to sellers, in particular, active property sellers researching the market. So you add all these four together, and this is the areas that you need to, in your prioritization each day, ensure that you've got these in order. Now, they are inexorably linked, most certainly, but in terms of priority, we need to make sure that we are constantly focused and we have a steady flow of active property sellers. Second priority is that we are running consultative presentations. The third is that we're managing expectation to get those properties sold. And the fourth is culminated in the place where buyers and sellers are both seeing us. Having said that, I do make this particular point that welcome homes still need to be centric to the first, which is prospecting, in their priority of intent. Because as I say, your next seller, you don't have to find them, they're already watching you or they're attending your open home. So you have to look at your open for inspection and say, would this be conducive to somebody saying they would list with me? And as you can see there, I call it a virtual listing presentation. So more listings equals more listings, and that's the continuity that you want to create. You want to get yourself into a state of flux. I've said this many, many times, but once you get to about 8.5 listings a month, that is the point where you start to go forward. And what we want to do is make sure that when we get a listing, when you are focused on that initial listing, that you do not make the mistake of immediately moving to try to sell it. In fact, what you ought to be doing is saying, how do I get that one listing and immediately leverage off it and turn it into 2 and into 4 until we reach a market share level that is optimum, which is roughly about 30%, where you become a player. So I've said this before, 60 to 90% of every area I go into is dominated by 3 agents. We call those agents the players, the rest are contenders. If you're a contender, you really need to move yourself into that position of player, and then ultimately you want to stay there where you are basically regenerating listings and holding that market share. If you want a greater than 30% market share, then you need to look into other areas. So I say getting more listings equals getting more listings. It's the listings that bring the listings. The primary draw card is marketing. The primary draw card of marketing is presence. And that's what we're looking to create. So getting more listings will invariably get more listings. So I ask you to go back to begin. If you haven't already done this, have a look at the video that's available to your SALEStrainer online and find your why. It may well take you a fortnight to work this out. It is 2 weeks well invested to reach your goals, because once you have those goals, you now have a destination. And when I talk about how you initiate that destination, how you put a strategy in place, how you put a plan in place, it's made all the easier because you clearly understand where it is you're trying to go. Having done that, the priority then, to my mind, becomes prospector and the primary active seller protocols. These big three, or I call them the big three listing generators, simply cannot be underestimated. If you make this a priority in your real estate life commencing today, you can radically change the way in which you are prospecting, radically improve your productivity, and most certainly be in control of the outcome. So we say, first and foremost, you need to corral all that sales inquiry. Now, many of you have been along and seen it, but I simply say, when active property sellers first come into touch with you, they are typically posing as buyers, whether it be at a welcome home, whether it be a phone inquiry, whether it be responding to a just listed or something like that. And they want information because they are desperately trying to ascertain that the value of their property is greater than or equal to the amount of money that they need to actually fulfill their motive. And until such time as they're clear on that, they're not respondent or receptive to any form of prospecting. So during this sales inquiry, so long as you are recording that, and then you have the attitude that I will follow it up when it matures to about somewhere between 4 to as long as 12 weeks old, it is imperative that you actually corral this. Most agents, unless you're not in the market in any way, shape or form, have the opportunity to get hold of all that information, be it from buyer inquiry and or prospective active property seller inquiry. So if you have that, and then you have a place to go back to in 4 weeks' time, suddenly the opportunities open up to you in a way that's just hard to imagine. Secondly, if you then focus on your welcome homes and what you do inside of those, you know, re-engineering them so they capture the imagination of the sellers, stimulating inquiry, welcoming all types of people to come and see them, particularly active property sellers, particularly the owners of property in the immediate vicinity. Most likely, if you invite them very early on and do it the right way, they are going to frequent and attend those open for inspections. And therein lies the opportunity to identify. Having said that, and I don't want to go too much into this today, but don't move to a market appraisal once you identify them. Instead, move into a consultative disposition. What is it that you're trying to do? Then identify how they're going about it. And I'll be talking about this in the following series of SALEStrainer Online, how you actually move in, offering something significant of significant value. The reality is there's no value in a market appraisal. A market appraisal is really based around comparative value. Comparative value is quite subjective and open to opinion, and I don't think it offers any value. I certainly don't think it's the key to listing properties, and it's definitely not the key to demonstrating professional capacity, which, let's face it, that's what they buy. And then third, but by no means least, is the regenerative prospector process. Now, all three are integrated. You know, from welcome homes, you get sales inquiry. Welcome homes form part of the regenerative prospecting process. So when you get a listing, I say that within an immediate vicinity, up to 5 active property sellers are watching you. If you're not leveraging, if you're not getting that inquiry from that listing, it simply means that the message that you're sending from that listing you've got is not conducive to those prospective sellers wanting to talk to you. And you have to be sure that the message that is emanating is a good one. So we say that you need to get signage cover out there. This needs to be your paranoia, if you like. Because if I say that you don't have to find sellers, they're already watching you, then you have to be very, very heavily monitoring and readily accepting the fact that you're not getting called in, the fact that your prospecting is letting you down is most likely to do with that your level of presence is not perceived as you being a player in that market. You're a contender. And the moment you're a contender, you've actually got scarcity, which means you are subjected to concessions in fee, concessions in marketing, and concessions in other terms and conditions surrounding winning that listing. So we say, make sure you've got sign recognition out in that marketplace and push that bike as hard as you possibly can. The next thing that you need to focus on is your active property seller chase list. So I see this, and one of the things that we do inside of our 3M program, where we are directly working with, whether it be salespeople, whether it be new rookies from our property careers, or all the way through to our real estate rock stars who are experienced salespeople and are ramping up their productivity, whether they have on board a sales associate as a PA or an assistant, if you like. But we are on every week, we're saying, where are you at with the chase list? And what can we do to market to those sellers so that you jockey yourself further up the line in terms of where you stand as a choice? So you need to maintain an exhaustive and clearly visible list that's staring you in the face every day. What do you need to consider? Well, you should be sending them relevant market information. If your company is making sales every 2 to 3 days, they need to know about those. They're best sent by way of SMS because it's not confronting, but the message is still coming across. You need to openly invite them to your welcome home so they can see these contrasted. You need to tell them about buyers you have that potentially could be perfect for their property. And you need to actually be figuring out what actions do I need to take to win this listing. And that needs to be the priority, not sitting back and saying, oh, the other agent's probably discounted or they're probably giving away free marketing. You need to counter that by, again, using intuitive ideas about how you present professional capacity and ongoing value to them. If the other agent is merely offering a discount, if they're merely actually over quoting the comparative value, that should be able to be readily undermined with your actions. So that's what we say. Make sure that you've got to focus on this, that we are clearly seeing where you are with your chase list. Secondly, in communication, you need to be, and in your consultation, you need to be uncovering the emotive. So it's most important that you're asking, what or where are they trying to go or do, which every agent does, but this typically only reveals the superficial motive. Over a sustained period, certainly in the first 2 weeks of listing this property, I am focused on figuring out or drilling down through the layers. And I ask that question that most kids do, why would they want to do this? And what I'm looking for from that prospective seller, from that person even once they're listed, is pushback. If they push back, if they're argumentative about why they should do it, that tells me that the motive is quite strong. And then, of course, the last component inside that motive is, when does this have to be done by? These are not questions that you can ask in a confronting manner up front. This has to be done over a prolonged period of time where you are talking to the owner. And this allows you to determine the emotive. You get someone that knows what or where they're trying to go, why they're trying to do it, and when it must be done by. I can tell you, you have a seller that absolutely must sell. So you can do and say things to these people that will change, that will move that to the sales space fairly readily. If they would sell, if the right circumstance prevailed, these are owners that are saying to you, look, we would reduce the price, or we would consider putting the property on the market, but we can't find anything to buy. This should not represent to a professional agent anything unusual. What we need to do is take the consultative disposition and show them how to go about the process. So your focus needs to be, in the first instance, getting a grip on the motive so that then you can actually determine the actions that you need to do. Don't sit back and run the hope method, hoping the market will take care of everything, because it will with a select number of listings, but not with all of them. And there's those that might sell if the right price is achieved. These are still good for market presence. They are still good for you generating other listings from, but in all likelihood, they probably won't sell. So as long as the communication's right, as long as the situation's understood by both parties, then it shouldn't present too much of a problem. So around the welcome home, we need to open, open, open. The more activity that people see in your patch, if you like, in your marketplace, the more likely they are to make you a consideration when it comes time to sell. So opening the same property over and over again, to you might feel a bit weird, but to the prospective seller, it demonstrates that you are active in the marketplace. And we're looking to qualify, or I should say, identify active property sellers only. We're not trying to get down and do market appraisals. So all of the things and the components that you can add in that make the home more inviting, more welcoming, these are things that we need to focus upon. And I will be in a later series showing you exactly how to make your welcome home rather than an open home a complete standout. With prospecting, with Prospector, we're looking for a daily listing appointment. And this needs to be set up the day before. If you make this your singular focus, if you are so brutal with yourself that you ensure that you never leave the office without having a listing appointment set for the next day, this will feel brutal, but it will change the entire dynamic of your performance. Listings need to be done one day at a time. If you focus on this one day at a time, if you get a listing presentation every one day at a time and your conversion improves, you will choose that focal point fairly readily. And with R2Ss, we basically need to be calling existing property sellers every day, asking those series of questions that I just talked about on Motive. The whole key, the key to your priority at the moment, in terms of prioritizing as you embrace the year ahead, is to adopt a focus of getting more listings. The more stock you have on the shelf, the more likely you are to win the listings moving forward. And that puts you in a position of a player, which in turn creates a lifestyle.